to Wake the Bear Radio with your host, Brandon Johnson, Chris Hurst, and Ron Powers.
Yeah, a whole lot of waking going on. Waking up for 2024.
Woo! Yes, 2024 looks like right out of the gate, lots of things are happening. Just really excited for this year and starting off. This is our second one. Last week we did the longest show we've ever done. I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes. We went through the entire year. That was awesome. Just all the shows, all the topics that we covered. It was really a good memory lane as well. It just showed how much advance we were making as a people to the truth.
Yeah, and we talked about our original goals too. When we established Wake the Bear Radio, we really wanted to help activate people both locally and any place that our voice would go forward. So a lot of what we're doing, I think, in moving forward in 2024 is really making sure that we are bringing hope. We are activating people. We are helping them understand concepts they may not have understood without our voice. And we really are a local voice that goes far out on the radio, out on the airways. And so we want to make sure that issues are clear and that we empower people to say not, oh no, but, oh, I think I can do something about that.
Yeah, I think about, when we go back to when we first started, one of the major things we wanted to do is help bring people discernment to tell whether the sources of information that they're receiving are from God, from man, from evil, is it true? And the reality is we don't need to be fearful about the truth. The truth sets people free. And we believe that to be true. And so we start, I remember one of the names we came up with was question the narrative. We stand your ground, clear the air, return to reality, total recall. These are some of the names we came up with, but it really just seemed like, we wanted to be local. There's a lot of global shows out there that really seek to have lots of followers. And of course we want lots of followers, but we really want to be a local voice. So that people that in your own backyard, people that you relate to who are just doing the day-to-day work of going through, looking at the headlines, reading below the headlines, comparing and contrasting what the mainstream media is saying and what other quality, journalists and citizen journalists are saying and find the truth. And it really does take that much time. And unfortunately, it's almost like you need a PhD in journalism today to even just understand what's going on. So, Ron and Chris and I, we really feel dedicated to bringing you kind of a citizen journalist approach to the truth from a Christian perspective, really making it saying, hey, how would Jesus have us think? How would Jesus have us act on these things? And getting past the lies, because there's a lot of deception out there. So that's what Wake the Bear is about, is waking up people locally, questioning the narrative and bringing you truth from God's perspective, what we believe is God's perspective, and to the best of our ability. And we have the Holy Spirit, and those who are Christians do out there listening to us do as well. So hopefully our spirit and your spirit are connecting, and we are illuminating topics for you and empowering you to think deeply.
That's really, really good, Brandon. And I think that when we do hear something, we need to be able to respond. And at no point are we to retreat, or are we to go into despair or agitation or anything like that. So when you do hear something that is a little bit frightening, just think about, okay, how can I respond? And so we want to encourage people, yes, pray and ask the Lord, what do you think about this? But also at the local level, you can run for office. You can write to your government officials and let them know, hey, we don't like this thing. We don't like these open borders. We think that this is a really bad idea. You can write to the newspapers, letters to the editor. You can make social media posts. You can begin to speak about these subjects with your friends and your family and your neighbors over the back fence. And you need to keep things in the conversation. What you don't want to do is stay silent, sit on the couch and fret. So that is not the right answer. And the only way that evil is going to win this is if we step out of the game. And so we know that right now there's a lot of momentum because the media has the big news. I mean, they get to do the headlines, but a lot of their headlines are not real. And they, remember the movie Wag the Dog?
Yep.
They are making up a narrative they want us to get a hold of. So remember, we don't tolerate harmful things to our family, to our health, to our biblical values, to life, to law, to order, or to our freedom. So do not tolerate things that are bad for us.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is we're trying to help other people get a voice by using our voice, and staying silent. I've said this before. I don't. I look at my grandkids someday will come to me and they'll be able to honestly say my grandfather did not stay silent when there was an attempt by the communists to take over our country. And it's really easy to read stories about World War II and people that fought against the Third Reich and all of the horrible things that happened during the Bolshevik Revolution. And we read stories about these heroes, but people don't realize we're going through an actual war right now. Like they're literally, there's not bombs falling out of the sky, but we are in a very intense psychological warfare going on. It's spiritual warfare. It's psychological. It's fifth generation. And if bombs are falling out of the sky, we would know exactly who's on what side and what's going on. But we are slowly there's an erosion of our freedoms being taken away from people that are in cahoots in our own government, in cahoots being bought off and paid for by foreign interests. And we wanted to expose those things. The Bible tells us to expose those things. And the two biggest enemies I think that we have, or the two biggest tools that Satan uses against the church today, is fear and apathy. And if he can get us to be so scared that we don't fight back and we don't speak up, or if he can just get us to be apathetic and sit on the couch and watch our movies and watch our circuses and have enough bread. Marcus Aurelius said, give them bread and circuses and the people will never revolt. Some of the stuff is designed to keep us apathetic and go back to the way things were. You know what? You don't maintain liberty in this nation by sitting on the couch. You've got to get active. So many of our friends are taking biblical citizenship classes. Many of our friends are running for office, trying to reform the Republican Party back to its conservative roots. I know myself and you, Chris, are both running again, and for the Central Committee. And you're doing are doing the fire board as well. You're doing that as well.
That's right.
So we're not just, I think one of the big things that you've said and multiple times we take kind of from General Flynn is we need to think globally, like what we want to see change, but we have to act locally. And the best thing we can do is be a part of our school boards, be a part of knowing our elected officials, be getting on the board ourselves, bringing salt and light to these institutions at the base level, at the smallest level. That's how we change America, and that's how we reclaim it. So
that's so good.
That's good. Good.
Yeah, Ron, you came up with our title tonight. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and get us started on our title?
Distractions from the naughty list. It's the distractions aren't coming from the naughty list, but they are distractions that are happening, keeping us to focus from focusing on the naughty list. The naughty list here, it sounds a little bit like Christmas, naughty and nice, and checking it twice, but this is a list that has been checked twice, and this is the Epstein list. And what's interesting is we know about this list over 2 years ago. In 2020 in July, they had a Q post for what was it? Anyways, I think it was 4557 or something like that. 4577. Anyway, it gave the list that they had at that time, and it was very interesting. And that's what we're going to be covering tonight. So this list came public through the courts. There was a judge that demanded to have this thing made public and unsealed, and now it is coming out slowly. It's trickling out, and it made a lot of news last week. So we had a specific person that was called Doe 36. and then we'll talk about him. I don't know. We could jump right in if you want, or give more background.
Yeah, no, I would say let's go right into it. I mean, people are talking about this list right now. We've had a lot of people that that we already kind of knew, like you said, knew that were on this list. And then there's people that we didn't know. I mean, I think even Hawking was on the list. You know, there's new videos that come out, and this is testimony. This is court testimonies, documents and papers and videos, and all of this evidence that's been hidden. It was given to the FBI more than 3 years ago, and the FBI has either just sat on it, but it's just finally coming out now. And it's interesting, you know, and I'm going to point this out because I think this is, you know, part of the title, distractions from the naughty list. There was also the same day that this information came out, there was a massive response by police in Miami to a mall fight with sticks. Juveniles with sticks were fighting, and they brought in like over 100 cops to respond to a few, you know, kids fighting. And there was all kinds of like stuff on the online, people talking about maybe there was an alien creatures, people were shooting at 8 to 9 foot creatures, all kinds of like fantastical things. And I just thought to myself, you know what this is? This is most likely an attempt to get the truthers on a different subject than the Epstein, the Jeffrey Epstein list being exposed. And I think that's one of the things that we need to be really careful is we need to like monitor what else is going on, monitor all the things going on, but we need to recognize what is this story distracting us from. And so I just wanted to point out, I was going to share this screen real quick on, it has all this video, and then there's like this, you know, amorphous thing at the bottom, and people are trying to say that's a creature, or it looks like 3 people walking with shadows. And there's just kind of, and granted, I wouldn't put anything past the cabal to try to distract us, but I do think that there's this massive disinformation campaign to get our eyes off of other things like January 6th coming out, and then of course Epstein list. So let's jump further into the list, the Epstein list.
Well, let's even take a further step back. Let's, in case there's someone in the audience that doesn't know what Jeffrey Epstein and what that list is and what he is, why don't we just kind of briefly go over it? So Jeffrey Epstein was a person that had ties to the rich and the famous and the elites, yet no one knows exactly what his credentials were for becoming that. You know, at one point he was a teacher, and next thing you know, he's managing multiple millions of dollars with all these elites' money. And all of a sudden, he's having all these celebrities and all these politicians around the world coming to his places. And the guy is just dripping with money. And so he has this island, Little St. James Island in the Caribbean. And it was the Epstein Island. It's the one he bought, owned the whole island. It's a small island, but it's perfect for a single huge home with a nice port and all that stuff. And so he would have all these people visit his island. And he had other properties as well with some nefarious stuff. But this island, apparently, as you could see in the picture below, there's a lot of CDs or actually DVDs where there was a lot of recordings being done. And when we first heard this, when it first even came out, it was on the Q boards. Now, for those of you who do not follow Q or think it's just weird, just remember there's been like almost 3,000 articles against Q, and they keep on doing it. So that may be some of the influence why you think it might be a bunch of wackos or something, because there's a lot of stuff. This is stuff that came out on the Q boards way before anybody else, and it had lots of pictures. And the interesting thing about the pictures on the Q boards is most of these pictures are pictures that cannot be found anywhere on the internet. They were original pictures. You could do searches, a Google search on images and stuff. And a lot of these were original images. And you had a lot of celebrities. And John Doe, number 36, was revealed this week, which is no surprise to anyone who's gone to the Q boards and stuff, which it was Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton has been friends with Jeffrey Epstein since 1993, and he has been to the White House more than 17 times. And so it's very interesting. And these are things that came out in the court cases. Yeah. And so when you enter into his one of his homes, Jeffrey Epstein's home, you have that picture. Why don't you scroll back up to that picture of Bill Clinton in a dress. Now that's not a photograph, but it's a pretty good painting. It almost looks like a photograph of him in a blue dress. That blue dress is probably a Monica Lewinsky's dress. But the fact that somebody so predominant like Jeffrey Epstein would have that picture at the entrance of a home for all the others to see is kind of a very big, bold statement that I own you. I own you. And, look who I own, because that would be normally disrespectful. But the people he invited, they all knew Bill Clinton as well. And so very interesting. He also had a picture of George W. Bush with a bunch of blocks like towers that fell over, and he had paper airplanes, something to do with 9/11. Very interesting. But oh yeah, there you go, right on the fly. Yeah, I hadn't seen that one in a while. So it's very interesting. What are the statements coming out of those photos? But nevertheless, the whole story about the Epstein Island was it's kind of a honeypot. If you want to control the world's leaders, you lure them by their weaknesses. Sex is a big weakness for many men, and so he would fill this place with underage girls. It came out in the court cases, the documents this last week, that Ghislaine Maxwell was ordering. At one time, there was 11 girls, all between 14, 15, upwards to 18, and they said maybe 19 years old. So they're all underage pretty much. And, they'd have this thing called the kissing game, and they would just start doing really erotic stuff and et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to go into details, but needless to say, it's inappropriate. And it would be with people that they wanted to blackmail. And, and how they would blackmail is they would have all these tapes. And in fact, I think I'm going to present one real quick, Brandon, just a picture of, here we go. Am I on there? Sorry. Let me just,
show it.
Yeah, it's been a while since I used this one. Share screen. There we go. Okay. Here we go. So this was a drop before the list.
Yeah,
here's the list when it first came out. And you'll notice the date. It's July 2nd, 2020. And this is the list that everyone was talking about. And it's not the full list, but you could see some names. I mean, I'm just going down here. Third one down, Alan Dershowitz, Alec Baldwin. I'm working down here. Barack Obama, Ben Affleck, Bill Clinton, Bill Murray. And so you could just keep on going down, and it's like, very interesting of this list. Ghislaine Maxwell, of course. But there are celebrities, there are politicians, and, Steven Tyler over here, Steven Spielberg, Stephen Colbert. It's interesting how vocal some of these guys are against Trump, and they seem to always be on this list too. The most vocal. You got Will Ferrell, Will Smith, Woody Allen, et cetera, et cetera. But the post right before that is a very interesting picture, which we still don't know everything, but it was all about Epstein, and you could see that these are cameras. I don't know if you could see, and so they just kind of gave a glimpse of all the channels. There's 15, probably 16 channels at least in this picture, even though they don't show them all. And so I don't know if that was taken secretly, and that's why it's not a great shot, but this will come out because everything else has come out. And so
originally, didn't they say that those cameras were under the temple?
Yes.
That was there.
The underground
tunnels where these obviously children and girls are.
Yes, that's exactly, that's right. That conversation, it did go further into tunnels, and that's where you get we've had a lot of talk about tunnels under major cities, major places, and Epstein Island is no different.
Well, and one of the things you've talked about too, and we've mentioned a few times, is that Q said all of this is about revealing what has been done to children.
Yeah.
To protect the children. If you remember, President Trump made a bunch of executive orders to go after child predators and child trafficking. More child traffickers and child trafficking rings were busted up and arrested during his presidency than all the presidents combined since. So it's very clear, Q made this point. They're going after child trafficking. And even when President Trump was on air and they were questioning about Q, and he's like, I don't know nothing about Q, which of course all of us, both the white hats and the black hats, know he's not speaking the truth. He says, well, I do know one thing. They're against child trafficking and I'm for that. And that's okay. Right. And, so that's a big deal. And I think that's, Epstein, that's why we're spending so much time on this one particular story. That's why it's been all over the news. It's not some weird infatuation with this reality. It's the gross disgust that we have at the bottom of our stomachs. We realize that children are being abused. I mean, I think the information that we have in our nation is that like 80,000 children disappear every year. And then some of them are found, but a lot of them are not. And we don't really even know how many are found. And so there is a elaborate, use of a drug called, children, and of course adrenochrome and these other things that have been focused on because there's an evil empire, an underground empire that is doing these wicked things. And of course, Sound of Freedom came out and kind of exposed some of it, didn't expose it all. Jim Caviezel and Mel Gibson and some of these others, have exposed it, but it's not fully come out yet. So it's almost like a soft disclosure. I think last night there was a big deal that happened last night on the Golden Globes Awards. Jim Gaffigan was asked to be the comedian, and even after they finally had to find somebody to be the MC, he still brought up pedophilia. He still brought up that that's a theme that keeps coming up. Well, watch this.
This is so exciting for me. The Golden Globes. I mean, I can't even believe I'm in the entertainment industry. I can't. It's so unlikely. I'm from a small town in Indiana. I'm not a pedophile. I don't know if that's a new category here, but I'm here to present an all new category. All right? An all new category. This is going to be the first time stand-up comedians are going to be acknowledged at a major award.
All right, so that was the basic part of it I wanted to bring up. But he brings it up right off the bat, So
that is interesting.
Yeah.
That is, definitely interesting.
And 3 years ago when what was the other comedian that got up there and just said Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself? And
Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, and he's like, I know, he's all your friends, and he just called them out, and everybody was like big. Even Tom Hanks like, did he just say that? Oh my, So this is all coming out. People are figuring it out.
That is a classic footage that'll live in infamy. I mean, it's definitely. Hey, speaking of Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton, I know that they try to push Trump into this. They always like to show pictures of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein, and but here's Trump's take on it, and this was before all this, and I just wanted to. I couldn't find the original video. It's very hard to do a search, and actually it's been taken down, but I had it off of someone else's work, which was And We Know. So let me just play what Trump says about Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein here.
Do you really think that Clintons are involved with Jeffrey Epstein's death? I have no idea. I know he was on his plane 27 times, and he said he was on the plane 4 times. But when they checked the plane log, Bill Clinton, who was a very good friend of Epstein, he was on the plane about 27 or 28 times. So why do we say 4 times? And then the question you have to ask is, did Bill Clinton go to the island? Because Epstein had an island that was not a good place, as I understand it, and I was never there. So you have to ask, did Bill Clinton go to the island? That's the question. If you find that out, you're going to know a lot. Thank you very much.
So it's very interesting because he points that out. Now, if there was even a remote chance that that Donald Trump was on that island, he would never have brought that up. He would never, ever bring that up, because he's basically saying, and I know you could say, oh, projection and stuff, but people don't talk about it. They don't bring it up. And he had talked about Bill Clinton. That's not the clip. There was another clip where he was in being interviewed, and there was an audience and stuff. And they said, thoughts on Bill Clinton. And he goes, well, I think he's going to have a lot of hard times ahead because his connection to this island. And he just kind of alluded to it. And that was really early on, very early on. I don't even know if he was he president at the time? I can't even remember. It was that far back. And so, and what did come out of the court case, these cases, is that Donald Trump was not on those islands, and he did not go on that. And so that was a good thing that came out, to clear his name once and for all. He did take a plane ride. I think it was from Florida to North Carolina.
Yeah, West Palm Beach to
yeah. And now, if you live just down the street from another multimillionaire, you're going to cross paths. There's going to be pictures of you and other people in your class that live in the same neighborhood.
Right.
You may go to the same parties. So he's not visited his place. He's visiting parties that happen to be both guests attending, things like that. So.
Yeah, and I want to point out there's this interview here with Megyn Kelly with Julian Assange. This was many years ago, and she asks him, how come you haven't revealed dirt on Trump on WikiLeaks? You had all these, major drops of all this information, and he said, "Well, I can't release information that we don't have information on." So, in other words, there is no information. There is no dirt on Trump in these areas. So, I don't have time to share the whole one. I didn't scrub through it, but go back and look at this talking about the murder of Seth Rich, and the murder occurred on July 10th, 2016. She's asking him these questions about who his source is, his confidential source. It's come out now, I think, that Julian Assange has actually admitted that his source was Seth Rich, who was later murdered on the streets of DC after late night after a party or something. He was leaving something and was killed, and nobody took his wallet or his watch or anything, just a shot in the back. So he was obviously assassinated probably because he released all of that corrupt information about the DNC. Yeah. But we wouldn't have known about any of that if it wasn't for Julian Assange. So these truth tellers are suffering very, very huge problems in their lives because they were willing to speak the truth, even if they became targets. And of course, Seth Rich became an ultimate target. He was killed, and Julian Assange, they're trying to get a hold of him and kill him. So this is where a lot of this information came from, the Q drops, and then Julian Assange confirmed a lot of it. And then of course, Donald Trump, they say Donald Trump was went to the island, but there's no evidence of that. And there's a ton of evidence of everybody else. So
there's evidence that, or statements, sworn statements opposite of that nobody knows of him ever going. And Donald Trump himself said he didn't, which may not mean anything if you're saying it about yourself, but
yeah, totally.
But they would have, believe me, they would have found it. If there was any inkling, if they could find something like that, in a heartbeat. If you try to impeach him a bunch of times, and you try to, with secret witnesses that he tried to do a coup, all that stuff, that would have been a really easy one. That would just be like, hey, look, you know how bad he is, Jeffrey Epstein, and look, he went to his place, where all this stuff supposedly happened.
Ron, do you know what the source of the list is? Is it like a little black book, or is it something off of a computer? I didn't catch that.
I believe it's off of a computer, because this was a high-tech situation. There was a camera in every room. That's what that island was made for, apparently. It's to bring in people and to blackmail them. And so
the honeypot scheme.
It's the honeypot. It's like, they'll make a movie out of it someday, and it's just how you do it. So they have their documentation, and they would have computers that have all this stuff, backups, everything, own power source. They've got it. And that list is out there. Heck, we saw the list over 2 years ago, partial list at least. But so yeah, I don't know. There was another thing that came out this week. You cover this one, and I'll get the other one prepared.
Okay, well, I was just going to show you some of the footage. This is the actual FBI raid of the island, and you'll see that there's a video footage of it, and then there's also aerial footage of the FBI in the buildings collecting data, and they've got all the videos and all of the information, and this one doesn't show it, but they actually show an aerial footage of those people up there collecting the footage, like this aerial shots like this, and the FBI is actually covering the windows because they're actually in there raiding it. And then of course this is what years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we, and the names of all of these people haven't come out till now. Like we're talking
Right.
5
So
years
they
later.
know what's on the whatever they found.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is last week, if you looked at Twitter or X, what was trending was all, it was all Jeffrey Epstein, client lists, logs, Bill Clinton, all this stuff. And so there was a lot of interest generated. I think that for a lot of people, it was perhaps the first time they had heard that he was on the list. Here's a couple. Bill Clinton's on this list, but this one right here, the court documents alleged sex tapes taken of Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, and Sir Richard Branson by Jeffrey Epstein. And basically, the witness that was blowing the whistle is a lady named Sarah. Where is her name there? Sarah Ransom. What a name, Ransom. And so she was one of the victims, and she's in this court case. In fact, this is what she looks like today. And so she claims, and we don't know for sure, but she claims that she has tapes of all these people. So I think there was a magazine that said, oh, she admitted she didn't. She just wanted to do that to save herself. Like, hey, I got the tapes. If you kill me, they'll be released or something.
Well, I think she did admit that she was part of some of the filming. On that. It's funny because Ransom is a character in Pilgrim's Progress, isn't it? It's like a hero. It's interesting that she had the courage to come out. That's amazing. I think one of the things you could say about why are we spending some time on this is that what we have been aware of as people who have done a lot of research for years, and probably many of our listeners, that these things on Epstein Island that they're alluding to, they're not just conspiracy. And I was at a pizza parlor with family members. It was a big family reunion, and it was like a sports pizza parlor, and they had all these screens up, and on every screen, this was Friday night, what was Epstein's picture. So they were showing the news, the mainstream media was showing Epstein. And I thought, oh my goodness. I mean, it was a family restaurant talking about the perverted things, and the pedophilia was now that commonplace word on the news, and the apparent ones that were caught up in it. And so it was a wake-up time for me that this is important, because that which you don't just want to talk to the choir. There are some people who are actually seen for the first time because the media has kept it in such a blackout, or it's been labeled conspiracy. Now it's finally shifting over from conspiracy to truth.
Yeah, absolutely. It just shows how much progress is being made in the truth community, that what was once considered conspiracy is now showing to be true. How this affects us is, it's not that we're interested in the sex lives of the rich and the famous or something like that. There is an effect that affects us. And that effect is when you're compromised as a politician, you begin to do things that maybe do not represent the people, things that are, bad for the people. And so this was an operation, Mossad, I think Ghislaine was, her father was a spy, Israeli Mossad spy.
Yeah. I mean,
And so,
I watched this entire expose on Ghislaine Maxwell like 3 years ago, and it just showed, and all the stuff she flew a helicopter.
yeah,
She was an operator of a submarine. Her father was involved with the Mossad. He changed his name to Maxwell so he sounded more English, but he's actually Israeli or Jewish from some background in Europe, either from the Khazarians or the Ashkenazi. So he came over, he changed his name, he became a media mogul. He was part of the Mossad, which is there's good parts of the Mossad and bad parts of the Mossad, just like there's good parts of the CIA and bad parts of the CIA, good parts of the FBI and bad parts of the FBI. But what we're seeing here is what I believe is what JFK was talking about before he was killed, is this this industrial complex, the military industrial complex, a global plan to control the world through secret services and the Five Eyes and these unelected, unaccountable secret services that have been weaponized against the people, so that they're controlling the world rather than letting governments who are elected by the people control, and bring about what they want. So
yeah. And that's why it is so important on a personal note to really, well, dedicate yourself to something higher, to the Lord Jesus Christ. Because when you are motivated by someone above, like, hey, I would not want to displease the Lord. God's word says that this is wrong and this is right. You begin to be free. When you follow your flesh and follow your desires, whether they're good or bad, if you follow the bad ones, you compromise yourself. They create pain for others. They break marriages. They break up families. And a lot of these people, they may have had one too many, let their guard down because their guard was down on drugs or excessive alcohol, and it didn't really ring a bell that, hey, something could be off here with all these young girls, and it was very pleasing to the eye. And next thing you know, they're in over their heads, completely compromised, and they're like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to lose my family? Is my wife going to leave me? My kids will completely disown me. Will I lose credibility in my office because people will know that I just follow my worldly desires and I have no moral stance, no deep constitution for what is right? And so all of a sudden they're like, I'll do anything to hide that. I'll recruit others. I will drag others in. They'll say, invite your friends. And a lot of people were invited by others. And the next thing you know, it's like, hey, how come everybody likes to go to Epstein's Island? Well, I was invited by so-and-so. And so what happens is this people that do not have this strong, dedicated character. Now, it's something that takes work. And by being in God's word all the time and allowing his Holy Spirit to convict you and to warn you and say, don't go there, don't do that. Sometimes people say, oh, the religious people are fuddy-duddies, they're uptight, they don't do this or that. Well, it's a slippery slope. God's saying, don't even start on that slope, because once you take a couple steps, you're already sliding hard. And so I think it's a lesson. And that's why I think our founding forefathers of this country said that, we should have a belief in Jesus Christ before we consider even running for government, and the reason why is because you have a deep conviction of what's right and wrong.
Yeah, because if you don't fear men and you don't fear God, you won't follow ethics, morality, or anything. If you don't fear any, we hope if the government gets to a place where it doesn't even fear the people, that's what we're dealing with, is that they're not accountable to the people and they're not accountable to God. Well, that's when you have corruption happen. Anytime there's darkness, anytime there's darkness and unaccountability for too long a period of time with no check, no internal check in your spirit, it's going to produce, wickedness and corruption. And that's really what the job of the Holy Spirit is to do, is to bring about personal conviction where you make decisions on your own, not because of laws or rules or regulations, but because of the Holy Spirit's challenging you. Great points.
That's good. And I want to remind us too that we're not just talking about someone has an affair and they get caught. We're talking about pedophilia and now trying to normalize it. So you see the other agendas that are coming in by those who are stuck in it. In California, we have quite a few laws being manipulated right now, trying to keep pedophilia from being a felony. even. And you begin to see it in the movies coming out that this whole grooming, America is being groomed because these people know that they're exposed, and they want us to think, oh, it's not so bad. They just have a crush on a young girl or a young boy, and it is evil beyond evil. Because they are exploiting children, and they're trafficking children, and they're trying to normalize all of this. And when those children are no longer exploited sexually, most of them don't get turned loose into the public to tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They end up as a victim, whether it's organ harvesting or ritual abuse, sacrifices, or being used for human hunts, or being sold in labor. This is not a little innocent thing. It is an insidious evil. But the people in Hollywood and the people in our government that are participating, they just want it to be normalized and go. They lie about it, and they're hoping that their lie will never be questioned. And that's part of us. We need to confront the lies and say, look, first of all, it's not okay. And second of all, you're a liar, and you're a deceiver, and your life is corrupt.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing too. It's not like someone fell into temptation. This is like the actively pursuing wickedness, evil. There's a difference between someone who falls into temptation and gives in versus someone who is literally recruiting children and then committing child rape is what we're talking about. We're not talking about, oh, they like them. They're raping children. They're destroying their innocence, and like all the things you said about them, that this highly sophisticated child trafficking has been going on. It's one of the things that the movie Sound of Freedom talks about. It's the most fastest growing, financially profitable mafia cartel in the world, is the selling of children over and over again, because you can only sell drugs once, but you can sell children over and over and over again multiple days. And that's one of the things that Tim Ballard's organization and the Sound of Freedom talk about. So it's a big deal, and that's why we're really against it. And it's not just a one time someone screws up. This is like a active lifestyle of pure evil. And some of the stuff that's come out about Hillary Clinton's, I'm going to WikiLeaks things where she's talking about sacrificing a chicken in her backyard to Molech. I mean, these are actually her emails. And chicken is often referred to as a child in the language of the FBI. So there, who knows if she's a chicken or she really say. I mean, it's a deep rabbit hole that we're talking.
Frazzle drip, that comes to mind. There's a lot of talk about frazzle drip, and I won't even go there. It's the most disgusting thing I've heard. But her and Habahubad, what is it? Habahud? Now I'm blanking. Habahubadine.
Yeah.
Muslim Brotherhood. But yes. What are some of the distractions though that are happening right now? So we kind of know what's happening with this list, that it's making its way, and people are hearing for the very first time, like on all the big screens at the at the sports bar that Chris was at. So people are hearing, but what are some of the other things in competition with that main story? I know that we had the even today, they talked about the farmers in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess maybe that's not covered quite as much as it should be, but it is covered. It's the largest to date in protests they have in Germany. They basically shut the country down by putting all the farm equipment on the roads, and they are working against the global agenda. In fact, I actually have, I just got a little 1-minute clip. You got something there?
Oh yeah, I was just going to show the massive amounts of, the German farmers having gathered for the largest protest in history against their government, and the World Economic Forum are blocking off the streets. And you have these massive videos of protests, aerial shots. This looks like this shot is up on the arm of one of their tractors. I mean, people gathering all over in Germany to protest what the government is doing. And
as far as you can see, looks like a Trump parade.
Yeah. Looks like the truckers from Canada, or the guys from was it Denmark?
Ottawa, it does.
Yeah, so the word's getting out, it's getting out.
Well,
it's worldwide.
But it's not through our mainstream media, is it?
No.
No, but because it's not through the mainstream media, it's only building more because of that. They're like, yes, we've been told that the mainstream media is bought out, and this is an example of it right here. They didn't cover all that we were involved in.
Come on.
Yeah.
Audubon.
So I think it's it's they're at their end. The global elites. Once you have this many people wising up, and it just gets bigger and bigger.
Well,
in Germany drive fast.
Yeah.
You know what's ironic though about this is that the World Economic Forum is weaponizing the Green New Deal to shut down farming. Like it doesn't even make sense. People that are agrarian, people that are using the land for what it's intended for by God, to produce fruit, to produce food for people, they're saying we have to shut this down because of the carbon footprint of diesel fuel or of the use of nitrates. And it's complete madness. Like the science is complete. And this is the problem, is that when you want to control a nation, you get into its schools and you indoctrinate its children. And that's actually what's been going on for years and years and years, is that our universities have been teaching this pseudoscience, end of the world by climate change, and it's changed 30 times what they call it. First it was global warming, then it was global cooling, then it was climate change, and because none of the predictions ever came true, it's just a bunch of hysteria to usher in global control.
Yeah,
and what better way to control
these polar bears they're all animated icebergs, and you go, our polar caps are going to be gone by 2010. Well, there's some very wealthy Gore family members as a result of and other elites, that somebody's making a lot of money off of this. And then the whole idea of reducing population, the eugenics and the starvation, and getting people into a control. And I'll tell you, those German farmers as well as the European farmers, I hope our farmers will rise up too, just like that. They are Germans are strong-willed people. So they are a lot of the Germans came to our Middle America originally and settled there. So we have a lot of German blood in the heartland of America, and they worked hard clearing the land as new Americans. And so I have a lot of faith that Germany is going to make a quick shift away from the globalists.
Yeah.
Yep, me too.
I believe so.
People are waking up to it. That's what's going on. I love this. This one right here is pretty good. 1948, when Al Gore was born, the Earth had 130,000 glaciers. Today, just 73 years later, only 130,000 glaciers remain.
Yeah, it's isn't that the truth? I mean, you look at it. I've seen some documentaries on it.
Yeah.
And
he isn't a millionaire. He's a billion. B multiple times over. You follow the money. And he's not shedding a tear over any problem with the earth. And it's costing many nations a lot of money. Third world nations are trying to meet the standards that are unreasonable.
Yep. Well, part of controlling a people is controlling the food supply. People will do anything for food. I mean, they will do anything for food. We've seen that. We even saw that, with concentration camps and various camps, do this and we'll give you a piece of meat or something. And so people will do anything. So if you can control the food supply, and what better way to do that than to shut down the independent farmers and have a nationwide ownership of the food. And then you can start to say, we won't give you the food until you do this or comply with this. And so a lot of power there. Yeah. Very scary.
Yep. Here's the last one before we move on to a different subject. My friend's 8-year-old said, if carbon dioxide is bad, why don't we plant more trees? Because that's what they give off. He says, because Al Gore can't make money doing that.
Yep.
That's right.
The grifters.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's one way to reduce the population as well, right? Starvation, planned famines, planned shortages. What's another way? I think we're talking about all the sicknesses going around. I think there was a Kaiser nurse whistleblower.
Oh, big deal. Yeah. Kaiser nurse was interviewed, and she basically said the news media was saying that our hospitals were full here in the Bay Area, and they were absolutely not full. They were going on and on and on about us being overrun. We were absolutely not overrun. We didn't have anybody in, barely anybody in. And the people that we did have come in and that died or who had COVID didn't die of COVID. They died of the draconian procedures that we were demanded to enact over them. Remdesivir, and which kills your organs. And she basically came out and said she whistleblowed it all. It's crazy that it took, some people 4 or 5 years to finally whistleblow this, but because there was so much fear that they would be, lose their jobs. But there was an interview that was just done on Tucker. Tucker Carlson did an interview, I think number 60 or 61. It was number 60, where he interviewed what's his name? Weinstein.
Weinstein, yeah.
And basically, this is a virologist, one of the most important virologists of our day, and he basically said that pharma is in itself a corrupt system, because they have to be able to accentuate drugs that they know aren't completely safe and deaccentuate, push down drugs that might actually also help, so that they can make money off the drug they're pushing. And it's, he basically said it's a completely horrible system, and that, it's like he calls it Goliath, that these guys are like a Goliath. They're trying to stop them it takes a ton of energy. But basically he's saying, it's going to take enough people to stand up and speak out to shift. There's more of us than there are of them, for sure. But if, so he's calling to the patriots to speak out. And finally, we're getting this nurse, this ER nurse coming out and saying this, which it's interesting, because I don't know how you guys were. I'm pretty sure we were similar. I was seeing video after video after video of ERs and parking lots empty.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends sending me, go, look at this. Here's all these empty, all in the same day, all within the same week. And they're saying they're flooded, and they're showing photos from Italy of an ER of a different time of year, people, and they're like, and they're utilizing this B-roll and creating this hysteria based on untruth. And I kept posting that on Facebook and other places, and I kept getting censored because I was not following the official narrative. I'm like, hey, I'm just a guy looking at these videos that other people have taken and showing them, and you're censoring me, and because I'm telling people that the ERs are not full of people dying. And we were shut down. We were shut up.
Yeah, remember when COVID first came out, and they had those pictures in New York City of the freezer trucks outside the hospitals, like they were dying like flies. So they had to put them in people in freezer trucks so they wouldn't decompose in the hallways. I mean, we have got to realize they haven't even created a new storyline. But this winter, so the friend that you're referring to, Brandon, was someone in Florida that was told that in California, they called it a outbreak of California. And if you go on social media, even X right now, and you put in outbreak in California, what you'll see is they're calling it, this is the triple cocktail of flu, COVID, and RSV. And they're using children, trying to frighten parents, saying, if you don't get this triple vaccine, it could be very harmful for your children. And so the predictive programming keeps playing. And then they were saying that because of these outbreaks in California, the wastewater is filled with this COVID virus. I don't know how that works. RSV and flu, like viral shredding, or I guess you pee it out or poop it out or something. I don't really get how it all works. So they said to the pregnant women, if you love your families, you need to get a triple shot. And we know how harmful those the COVID vaccines are against the spike protein causes hemorrhagic events and clotting. I mean, those are two opposite things, but it is insidious advice to for prenatal care. They're recommending it right now. And
Yeah.
they did say that our hospitals are overflowing. And I have a friend right now who she has a friend in a long-term care facility, and they went in, and she has a big sign on her door that says COVID patient, because she tested positive. She has no symptoms at all. So everyone's required to wear a gown and all these, the mask and the whole eye where, because she tested positive, and they wanted to put her immediately on remdesivir. This is this week, and she doesn't have any symptoms. And thankfully, she was smart enough to go, I don't think so. I know what's in that stuff.
Yeah. It's
Stay away
interesting.
Stay away from hospitals in California, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I got a text from a childhood friend of mine who lives out in Florida, and he says, I'll read it to you. The text it was from Saturday. He said, Ron, be sure to stay away from California hospitals right now. They have a respiratory disease outbreak that's up 1/3 year over year. Apparently, those coming across the southern border are bringing TB, tuberculosis, pneumonia, and RSV novel variations with them. My wife had a class presentation at Tampa General in the OR department about the respiratory disease outbreak in California. It's expected to spread nationwide. It is usually contracted in hospitals. It's so very interesting. So there is a hospital, at least in Florida, that's saying, hey, there's an outbreak in California, and it's due to the southern border. Which makes sense. You have a lot of people from other countries coming in that may not be healthy, and they're not screened at all. I mean, they're just flowing in, and our government is not doing anything about that. That's another, you know, I don't know if it's a distraction or something that actually should be the forefront. Probably more of the forefront, how it's affecting this country. I mean, the great replacement, you know, they want to replace the voting block because, you know, you get a bunch of free stuff, come to America and just vote this way. And what's interesting too is I saw on the news this week where somebody had gotten a form to register, and they had Democrat, they had Libertarian, and Independent. And on the back side, it says if you want to vote, if you want to sign up Republican, you have to go online to register. So very interesting how they have these easy forms to fill out, and they have all the parties, but they don't have the Republican Party. They say, oh, you have to. And that was mailed to this person's house. And so I thought that was very interesting what's going on. They're trying to replace the voting block because there's no one else. I mean, people that are already here in this country, they want to save it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think people are waking up to there was a Rasmussen report that said 57% of U.S. voters that they polled, and this is a bipartisan poll, said that they believe that the mass immigration to the U.S. is a part of a political agenda to replace the existing American population. That should send chills down your spine. And that is what you were referring to, the great replacement. I mean, obviously we have a huge security problem at the border, and it's not being addressed. There were in the news, Texas is being sued for arresting illegal aliens and monitoring them. And so the federal government is suing them. The Department of Homeland Security is suing Texas. And so the government, the local governments are trying to keep the security problem under control, and the feds are interfering with it. So it really is, it's very insidious what's going on right now. I know Trump truthed out. He was talking about the next 10 months. And remember, in 10 months, we have a major election. In fact, in 8 days, the Iowa caucuses start.
Yeah.
And in 2 months, we have Super Tuesday, so these dates are coming. And he retruthed. He said, you know, a lot can happen in 10 months. And he started talking about, he said, in 45 days, Iran will have, he didn't say could have, will have a nuclear weapon. and a lot can happen. And then he spoke a little bit about the possibility of World War III. He said in 10 months, this country could be a completely different country. And so I think a lot of what the distractions, and maybe even Epstein Island, is a little bit of a distraction from something that might be more important, like these open borders. I know there just are a lot of things that are getting missed in the
Yeah,
news.
I think that you're right, Chris. And I think one of the things that you're pointing out that a lot of the majority of these voters think it's an attempt to replace the votership of America with people who will vote, Democrat or whatever. And I think that's actually part of it. But I think it's even more than that. I think it's more insidious than that. One, I think it's actually a cover for allowing sleeper cells, terrorist sleeper cells to enter our country. This is what a lot of people think. These are a lot of these people that are coming through. Like 90% of them are not families. They're military age males.
Yeah.
So what, and then if you have no place to work, you can't get a job. Well, you're going to do anything for money and food, right? When you get here. So you can easily be persuaded or manipulated. And we know that during the 2020 election, when 10,000 or 2,000 mules showed videotape of people who were going to NGOs getting paid to take ballots to the ballot boxes and drop them off, that if we traced it back, that a lot of these people were compromised. They were people that lived on the streets, people who were in desperate need of money, and they were easily manipulated by finances and in their dire situations to go and say, well, just take these. Oh yeah, these are good ballots. Here's 400 of them, but you can't take them to one box. You got to take them to 10 different boxes and drop off 40 in 10 box, and that's how you have to drop them off. So imagine what you can do with 10 million immigrants who don't have a green card, that don't have a way to provide for themselves. They're at the bottom of the barrel financially, and they're going to do whatever they can to survive. You've got a whole bunch of people that you can empower to do wicked things, and then they can't even prosecute because they're not even citizens, right? So this is that I believe is one of the things. And then this just happened today. This is breaking news, probably 6 hours ago. There was a hotel in Texas that just had a massive explosion in it. And, right now the notes say we don't know what it's from, but of course, the first thing we think of is, who would blow up a hotel like this,
Well, they have a suspect on there. It says the suspect. Scroll back up and you'll see his name.
44-year-old
migrant Sahi Omar.
Yep.
Yeah, he's not from Mexico.
No, that's not Mexico.
Yeah.
He's not helping in the fields with the farming.
But even that could be starting race
propaganda.
wars.
That's true.
You could just say this propaganda. Let's get a Middle Eastern person, or it could be legit. I mean, he's definitely motivated, especially the whole thing with Israel and the Muslims are saying, hey, we're going to do a worldwide jihad, and Iran has made these threats. So yeah, it's possible it could be real, or it could be, hey, we need to get a false flag going and get people riled up in this country so they hate anybody of Middle Eastern origin, and then boom, we're ready to go to war. And so who knows? And so that's the tough thing. Is this a distraction, or is this the real thing, or is this a manipulation? So got to really look into these things. That's
okay. So that right there is discernment, Ron. That's what we're asking Christians and people, minded people to do. Realize they want us divided. They want us to hate. They want us to fear, or they want us to be apathetic. And we can't do any of those things. We have to be discerning and saying, we're not going to jump to conclusions. We're not going to say, oh yes, let's go kill all those Muslims. Like, no, that's not the point. The point is not allowing ourselves to be hijacked by government and this is the problem, is that, they want to hijack us based on race, based on religion, based on sex. They want to hijack and motivate people to do what they would otherwise not do, so that they can actually accomplish their means. And chaos is how governments seize power or use emergency powers to not relinquish power. And that's what I'm concerned about in the next 11 months. If they can't get Donald Trump out of office, they can't get him off the ballot, and they can't seem to get to him because the Secret Service is protecting him. What they can do is, well, we're just not going to have an election. because we're in the middle of a war with Iran, or there's things blowing up in our country.
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about. And then there's the last one. I haven't even mentioned this one. If you bring in 10 million more mouths to feed, and you're also shutting down the food distribution, now you're creating chaos because there's not enough people not enough food to feed everybody. Now, I think we're still pretty far away from that in America. Praise God. But that is part, I think it's a 3-pronged attack. Voting system, voting fraud, terrorist, and food sources. There's multiple reasons why the globalists would utilize this influx of migrants to destroy America. And I believe it's coming from guys like Soros and these other and the politicians are bought off by Epstein and all that, so they're all pointing fingers at everybody else. Well, I'm not letting them in the border. Well, this person, and then they're blaming it on the federal government, right? Which is clear because the federal government's suing states if they try to stop it. And then they're going to end up probably eliminating Biden and we just make him the fall guy, and get rid of him. So that's obviously a very elaborate scenario with 3 possible theories, but you can't count it out. I'm not saying that those things are happening, but you do need to look at what is the play here. What are the black hats probably doing here? And this is what I think is going on.
Now, if you don't get rid of the food supply, what you can also do is have the currency collapse. And there's a lot of talk about that, hey, the currency, we're past the point of return. And now if you can't buy the food, those that didn't have a savings or had assets to barter with or anything, they're going to be going out saying, I'm hungry and I want your food. And so you'll see that. And you see a breakdown of stores being looted and then they're empty. And then
lawlessness.
Yeah. So it could go in that direction as well. I don't mean to sound doom and gloom, but these are things that you should mentally have in the back of your mind as a possibility. Right. Don't be naive. This is, this country's not immortal or unbreakable. If you have enough ungodliness and it's not being challenged like it should have been, it progresses and lawlessness starts to take over the land. So this is why it's so important to be active. As you had said in the beginning of the show, we need to change. I mean, we need to have somebody in the leadership position of this country that says, hey, we don't want open borders. We don't want the whole world to come in and emptying out their sane asylums and their jails and everything that's bad. We don't want to take that in, and we don't want to shut down big business because we want to save on gas. We want everything to be solar or wind power. And even though it's unsustainable, and so that's why the voting box is going to be very important this year. It's a zero sum game. It's all or nothing. This is it. This is the year. I would say it's the most important election in the history of our country. We heard that at 2016, but in 2020, but I think literally this is it. The 2024. I just can't see how it can go beyond that. So at the rate we're going downhill, with the crazy things that the Biden administration and stuff, I mean, something's got to change. Otherwise, game over. So is there anything else as we are kind of moving towards the end of our show?
Yeah, I think as we close up, there are a lot of emotions that can go out, and we do want to have hope. So don't stay in vexation. We already gave some good ideas. Of course, you start with prayer and you check your own heart and you go, my security isn't in the necessarily even in the tangible. We do have a God who comes through. He's a miracle making and God. He can duplicate bread and he can create good situations out of bad situations. But we also are people that are very ingenious, and those things that divide, I think, our attitude towards others are really important. So just determine it's not going to be me against them, whoever they are, because that is one of the biggest strategies. And just know that there are people who are fighting on things. You go, well, look, the voting didn't work last time. But I just want to remind people that the election fraud checklist People know that dead voters have indeed, they have proved, they have voted, that corrupt tabulators and software have been used, and that the Dominion executive, he was part of Biden's team, that there's problems with the machines, that the observers that were illegally removed. There are just so many things that were confirmed, have been confirmed, that fake signatures were accepted. And we have been through that, and there are processes that are being done. And so we want to support things like Election Integrity Project, and those, we want to go watch the polls. We want to gather evidence. We want to see if we see something, say something, and document it. So we are the system changers right now.
Yep, I agree. I think that, and I mention this a lot, and these two passages in scripture, and I think you guys agree. One, when Caleb and Joshua were told to go take the promised land, the 10 tribes, the 12 tribes went in, and 10 tribes came back with, oh no, the giants are so big, we can't win them, we can't beat them, and they were looking at it through a physical worldly view and not through a godly view. And Joshua and Caleb were like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, they're giants in the land, but our God is so much bigger than these giants. We need to go in and take the land. Surely we could take it. And, says they wanted to stone them because they were making these claims. They were so scared, so fear is not what we go into, but we don't pretend like there are no giants. We are definitely dealing with giants in the land. That's what the show is dedicated to. And then another story in Elijah, like you mentioned, Chris, Elijah was fighting Jezebel, and he called down fire from heaven by prayer, and it consumed and destroyed the prophets of Baal. I mean, killed them. Fire from heaven came on earth and killed the evil prophets of Baal. And then, Elijah was running for his life because he heard Jezebel wanted to kill him. So he went from being totally victorious and overthrowing the prophets of Baal by the power of God from fire from heaven to being a scared little person running from Jezebel, and then what happened is God said, you know what, take a nap, Elijah, take a nap. And then God sent a crow with bread and steak to feed him because he was hungry and he was tired. So, we serve a powerful God. He's going to do exploits and wonders. Yeah. And then when we're at our weakest moment, he's going to sustain us with food and steak from a raven. Things like this I expect God to do in the days to come. We expect miracles. We plan for the worst. Right. We plan and prepare. We pay attention. We search out the land. We look and see there are giants in the land, but we also recognize that our God is bigger and he will sustain us through this battle that are on the way. And I'm looking at 2024 and I'm going, man, it is a crazy one coming. Like it's not a woohoo excited for 2024. It's more like okay, buckle down, prepare for the battle ahead, because it's going to be crazy. But we know our God wins. We know that if we trust in the Lord and we wait on him, he will renew our strength. We will mount up on wings as eagles. We will run and not grow weary. We will walk and not be faint. And we are part of an army, a digital army, the Bible talks about. I mean, that Bible that General Flynn talks about that. The digital army who's fighting against this fifth generation warfare. So that's what we're about on Wake the Bear Radio. And we didn't get to Vigilant Fox's top 10, but I encourage you to go check out Vigilant Fox on X. And he's got the top 10 things you missed this week.
Absolutely. We have a lot to look forward to in 2024. But when it gets rough, think about it. It's the Lord. That's how he always works. He always comes at the end.
Amen.
And it's our end now.
God bless.